Hey everybody, Who's Your Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking about the Doctor Who episode Hyde. Now, first of all, a quick apology for this episode getting put up so late. Long story short, I was sick and I kind of went out of town, so, real life comes first. Anyway, let's kind of get into it. This episode is essentially a combination of things. One, it's a sort of a bit of a nod to the old British horror movies from the 70s, as I understand it. From what I've read, the haunted house stories back in the UK in the 70s were apparently pretty popular. But at the end of the day, what this really is a Fourth Doctor story. I mean, it's really no coincidence that this story is set in 1974, which was just the very beginning of the Tom Baker era. And it's also no coincidence that at its core, this is in many ways a gothic horror story, which is what a lot of the Tom Baker Doctor Who stories boil down to in many episodes. And there's nothing wrong with that. Seeing how different doctors react to stories that would have been typical to some of their earlier predecessors is something that we've been seeing ever since the show came back. And it's just always very interesting to see how various doctors deal with situations with familiar situations, because of course they all have different personalities and react to things in different ways. But overall, though, while this is certainly a solid episode, it's just not really a hugely compelling episode. I just really wasn't feeling it this episode. And the professor and the psychic girl, Professor Palmer and his assistant, they just don't really stick in my mind. It's really the elements from the greater Doctor Who universe, which pop up in a great amount in this episode, that really make it stand out to me. I mean, the story in and of itself is really not super strong. But, wow, sorry about that. Excuse me. I'm still not 100% over being sick. So anyway, let's get right into it. And talk about some of the things that I did like. First of all, I did like that the way that they got to the dimension where the chrononaut, I'm reminded of that old show 7 Days, if you remember that show when they brought that up, where that woman was stranded. Reminded me in some ways of the doorway to the Phantom Zone that we've seen in like Smallville and Superman 2. And I'm okay with that. The Phantom Zone is one of the elements of the Superman mythos that I've always particularly enjoyed. So I'm always up for a good Phantom Zone story. And to be fair, although Professor Palmer himself was not the deepest character ever, I really did like that scene where he and the Doctor are bonding and talking about the guilt they feel at the things that they have had to do as soldiers. The Professor fought in the Second World War, the Doctor fought in the Time War, and both of them have some serious regrets about what happened. Not for things that they did necessarily, they both did what they had to do. It's really more for the people that got hurt and killed along the way. Now, granted, the Doctor, as he said, basically killed off his own race. Not that it stuck, but that is really, at this point now, it is something that is always going to be a part of the Doctor. It was an enormous driving factor in the Ninth Doctor, and it was something that really hung over the Doctor, kind of the specter on his heels that was always there in the background. Now, the 11th Doctor, well, he of course hasn't left that behind. It still pops up to him. I mean, clear as told, the Doctor has a sliver of ice in his heart for a reason, and, well, we've seen ample evidence of that in New Who. And even going back into the older times, when we say, the 7th Doctor's reign as Time's champion in the Doctor Who novels, that is a very apt description. There is a side to the Doctor that is and can be extremely cold, and serves to remind us that no matter how he looks, no matter how he might act, the Doctor is not a human. He is an alien. His way of thinking, his values are not 100% in line with ours at all times. And that is something that both the Doctor's companions and we as his fans can sometimes forget to our own peril. But anyway, getting back into it, you know, let's just kind of skip to the fun stuff and talk about the little nods to the older episodes. The suit that the Doctor wears, we've seen him wearing that in the Satan Pit and a few episodes. We get to see the freaking Eye of Harmony. I believe that was something that popped up from the Doctor Who TV movie. You know, say what you want, Paul McGann was a good choice for the 8th Doctor. Of course, we also have the cloister bell going off. I'm one of those Doctor Who fans that absolutely loves it when the cloister bell goes off. It's just it's just sort of a cool that the TARDIS basically has an oh crap we're all screwed but function. And of course the cloister is tied to some really important episodes from the 4th Doctor era. And, you know, basically the cloister really was what heralded the end of the Tom Baker era and the transition to Peter Davison. And for those of us, you know, like I was watching those episodes in reruns when I was in high school on my local PBS station. But the idea, and remember, this was, you know, before my family got the internet, so I only really knew what I was seeing. Is like, holy crap, the Doctor just turned into another guy. What the hell? So, you know, that was really a real game changer for me. It's an incredibly memorable moment for me as a Doctor Who fan. And of course, we get to see nods to in the way that the little pocket dimension is explained, and you know, entropy and all of this, very very strongly reminiscent of E-space. I mean, I believe E in E-space is supposed to stand for entropy space, if I remember correctly. And there was the E-space trilogy, 3 episodes that were set in this little pocket dimension, which again, some very important stuff in the late Tom Baker era. I mean, that's where we were introduced to Adric, you know, controversial character, but certainly one whose role in Doctor Who was notable. And of course, we also got to see some cool stuff with Romana in those episodes. But you know, we also get to see that apparently Matt Smith pronounces Metebelis 3 significantly different than John Pertwee did. Now, Metebelis 3 is of course very significant because, if I'm remembering correctly, that's basically the planet that was basically invading Earth, and where the 3rd Doctor went and got the radiation poisoning that ultimately caused him to regenerate into the 4th Doctor. And let me see here. Yeah, I believe that kind of covers it mostly for the nods to the older Doctor Who. But, you know, I gotta say, I was really geeking out and just absolutely loving some of these nods to the older episodes. This was, like I said, really a treat for the older fans, particularly the fans of the Tom Baker era. Now, getting back into this episode, we also get to see a little bit more of Clara's relationship with the Doctor. And again, I kind of like that they're sort of stepping away from where they might have hinted that there might have been something with the Doctor and Clara, going much more down the Donna route, where there is no romantic interest between the Doctor and his companion. And frankly, I'm glad for it. You know, we've gone down that road with Rose and with Martha and with Amy. Now, granted, Amy sort of snapped out of it a lot sooner, but still, I think that's just something that just kind of needs to be toned down. Like I said, we've just gone down that road so much with New Who, and it is like it was with Donna, a refreshing change of pace to sort of see the Doctor and his companion back to being just friends. So, with that said, briefly I want to talk about the astronaut lady who as a character isn't really sketched out so well, and to illustrate that, I haven't even bothered to really remember her name. Now, her, of course, turning out to be the descendant of the professor and the psychic girl, okay, that was a nice twist. And apparently they're cool with their great whatever granddaughter just sort of crashing at their place forever. I mean, I guess they're going to have to get a place together first, but still, I don't know. That just sort of seemed like a far too convenient thing for them to do. I mean, the Doctor could have taken this woman anywhere in space and time except back to where she was from. You know, couldn't you have taken her someplace where she'd have been much more successful at starting up a new life rather than just dumping her off in the 70s? I mean, for God's sakes, that woman's going to have to endure the disco years. That's cruel, Doctor. And what the heck was that, like, saran wrap that was in that, or around that space suit she was wearing? What in the world was that? Okay, let me see. I'm trying to think if there was something else. Oh yeah, the monster of the week. Okay, well, this is an ode to the older Tom Baker episodes, gothic horror and all that. So of course we have to see that. Now, this isn't all entirely bad, and it does certainly lend a much needed scary aspect to the ghost story, which wasn't the strongest part of the story. This is something that adds some real scares to this haunted house story. But the monster, which according to the folks behind the scenes was called the Crooked Man, I guess this was a nod to something that one of the other producers had done before. Whatever. Okay, this does lead to some nice stuff of the Doctor running around the woods. It's good. It's scary. It reminds me of that Hound of the Baskervilles episode of Sherlock a little bit. Great show. I love Sherlock. But it sort of really falls apart if you even stop and start to think about this to any real degree. First of all, how the heck did that thing get there in the first place? And was that thing's mate just sort of hanging around that area all the time? Like centuries and centuries? I mean, was it there like millions and millions of years ago when the dinosaurs were roaming around? And, what was up with it just sort of chasing the Doctor and laughing in a sinister fashion? I mean, I could understand maybe chasing the Doctor. It did want to ride out of there, but what is with the whole, hide off in the woods and laugh at the Doctor in a sinister, I'm going to come out there and eat your face fashion? I am the Doctor and I am afraid. I mean, seriously, what does this thing think it is going to accomplish by doing this? I mean, maybe it's not capable of human speech, but seriously, the Doctor, maybe it doesn't realize that it's scaring the Doctor, but going there, it's just such a stretch. You just have to let so much stuff slide to come up with any plausible explanation as to why this creature is behaving the way it is. Now, again, maybe it can't talk and go out there and say, hey, dude, could you give me a ride? I want to get back to my girlfriend. But, again, for any rational thinking being, what it's doing just doesn't make sense. It does not stand up to even the smallest bit of scrutiny. And that's really all I have to say. That episode of this element is really, that element of this episode is complete and utter BS. Okay? So, anyway. That I think really covers pretty much everything that I have to say about this episode. Again, I really liked the tone of what was going on. It was a really nicely done homage to the older Tom Baker era stories. Lots and lots of really chock full to the brim cool references for the older Doctor Who fans, and a few nice little character bits going on with the Doctor and Clara. But still, but ultimately, the overarching plot of this episode is fairly weak, and a lot of this stuff just doesn't work. The monster feels somewhat tacked on, and it's the way it acts makes absolutely no sense. So, good. It's a good episode that's really seriously weighed down by more than a few very notable flaws. Well, nothing's perfect, right, folks? Anyway, guys, that's everything that I have for you this time around. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Hoosier Jedi. Until next time, take care and have a good one.